Hi, welcome back. Lawmakers obviously speaking out to what the president had to say last night, and Andrew was down there in Washington. Again, it was mostly standard party lines and stuff, but there was a few times, Congressman Hines being one of them, where they said, don't be so quick to write this off that the speech is over, everybody goes back into the usual corners. That there is, as Bill said, that there's an incentive for both parties to try and get something done, even if it's just the next election cycle, but even more than that.
Though I think, candidly, most of the lawmakers would have said that that's more hopeful than realistic, and there's certainly going to be a lot of challenges in getting those laws passed. I talked to two Democrats from New York City, Joe Crowley and Charlie Rangel, and they were both fairly pleased with the address, although not universally pleased. Charlie Rangel in particular had plenty of criticism for the president on a couple of issues in particular. Here's some of what they both had to say. Congressman, the president began the State of the Union talking about turning corners from recession and from war. A lot of people might disagree with the perception that we've turned the corner from the recession, and certainly the president made points that not a lot of people have felt the benefits of that recovery. Was the president wrong in his assessment on those fronts, and what more needs to be done?
I think the president's correct in suggesting that 11 million people have found work opportunities since he's become president, that for 58 straight months we've seen job growth in the United States, and at the same time we've seen the markets explode. But we also know that it hasn't trickled down necessarily to the middle class and the people who are struggling. And what he was talking about is making sure that we afford opportunity to those people as well. He talked about tax reform to help the struggling middle class. And he also talked about making two-year colleges free in this country, directly speaking to the middle class. And I think it's something that resonates very strongly with the American people.
I don't know how strongly it resonated in the chamber. I saw a lot of Republicans sitting on their hands for those proposals and more, including paid family leave, pay equity for women. I'm curious if you saw any cracks in that objection from the Republicans, and why you think they oppose those policies so much.
I think we do make a lot about whether we stand in applause or sit in applause, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think there was a lost opportunity for the Republicans to express the support for some of those very same issues. We kind of kid around, maybe we're just in better shape than they are, and they can't get up and down. Or one of my colleagues said, well, maybe they have crazy glue stuck to their pants. But the reality is that the American people, as the president made reference to in his speech, they want to see us move beyond the petty partisanship and really address these issues that affect the everyday American. The wealthy are doing fine, and we have to find a way to help the people who are aspiring for the American dream, to secure it for those who have it, and open that latch so the people who want to see that dream fulfilled have that opportunity.
Congressman Rangel, the president in the State of the Union, towards the end of the speech, touched on Ferguson. He touched on the Garner case. Were you surprised he mentioned it, and would you have liked him to have said more about those cases?
I'm surprised that he mentioned it, and I did not want him to say more.
Why not?
Because if we have a country that people believe in equity and justice, if we can get a middle class where everyone believes that they can work hard and succeed, if we have all of the people enjoying the prosperity that we can get, believe me, racial prejudice that we experience in ours would be at a minimum if existing at all. It's only when people think that other people are better than they are, or when they take advantage of the fact that even poor folks are treated differently. But I tell you that when people are doing well, people act better, and I think that a stronger America will reduce the prejudice that we have. We have a cancer. The medicine to cure it is opportunity.
The president tried to turn the corner from war and from recession. He began his address doing that or making that claim. A lot of people don't feel like they've felt the benefits of a recovery from recession. Why is that, and do you think that the president was spot on in that analysis, or do you think there have been people who have been left behind, too many people?
Too many people? Too many people? The whole country's been left behind except the very, very wealthy and those that manufacture arms. I mean, when you say that the stock market is up, you're not talking about middle America. When you say that gasoline is down and unemployment is down, not for those who lost their jobs and never recovered it, no. What the president done is saying that now that the recovery is moving in the right direction, we've got to stop and bring those people who've been left out along with it. Of course, you mentioned that the president also said we're involved in war, and then he concluded that he's going to ask the Congress to support our efforts in the Middle East. Those are two separate things. you cannot be involved in a war and then ask the Congress to support something. So that has to be clarified.
It sounds like you feel like the president gave a couple of mixed messages on a few points tonight.
No, I didn't. But on the question of war, you certainly have to ask people, if we are in war, should we not have a bill to pay for that war? Should we not have a draft to pay for it? I mean, we've been going through this for 14, 15 years, from Bush to Obama, and no one knows what status it is. And so I would think that if the Congress is prepared to say we are conducting a war, against whom? Who would negotiate the peace? What's the strategy for the war? So I'm glad that he raised it. You cannot resolve a problem, and this is a serious constitutional problem our country is involved in, unless you raise it. So I'm glad he raised it. I hope that Congress takes it up and gives some answers that generations that follow will be guided when we put our young men and women in harm's way.
The president's push for a use of force against ISIS wasn't met with as much GOP praise as you might have thought going into the speech last night. As for the overall reaction by Republicans, many of the moderate Republicans I spoke to offered some olive branches of support for some of the proposals that came from the president. But of course, other Republicans took a much firmer stance.
I certainly think we need fundamental tax reform, and I hope there is room for negotiation, and I hope the president will meet us halfway. And I know Paul Ryan, the new chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, wants to work on fundamental tax reform, and I hope that we can have some progress on that this year.
What is meeting Republicans halfway? Is it reforming the tax code and not necessarily spending that money for other programs?
I think we need a business tax that is competitive with nations around the globe, and that is not now the case. And we need to bring profits from abroad back to the United States without taxing them further after they've already been taxed abroad, because we need to create strong new American jobs. An area where there was a good deal of support on the Republican side was on trade reform, and I think that the president will be looking to Republicans to support his proposals in that area.
We've heard a lot about the veto threats coming from the White House on Keystone and on the changes to Obamacare and the hours. What proposals would Republicans in Congress be willing to work with the president on? Are there some of the president's pet policy prescriptions where the Republican caucus says, yeah, we might be able to do some business there?
Well, we think it's the role of the president to come over to us. The American people spoke in the November election. The president said he wasn't on the ballot, but his policies were on the ballot. Make no mistake, he said. Well, the American people rejected the president's policies. We think the president needs to take a long, hard look at our policies and see, does he not want to come along and work with us instead of always saying it's my way or the highway.
Congressman Gibson, a lot of focus tonight on the middle class and on policy prescriptions that will help the middle class. Yeah. From what you're hearing from Republican leadership and from the White House, are you hearing things that you think might actually benefit the middle class?
Well, I think so. First of all, let's face the facts that we've had some good news lately, and you don't often hear that. You see gross domestic product, an indicator of the healthiness of the economy, 5%. That's big growth. Job creation, certainly we're not satisfied. We want to see more of this, but I would argue that the things that are helping are the things that are helping middle-class families, like lower energy costs. When you pay $2.30, $2.40 for a gallon of gasoline and you pay less for home heating, that means that's more in the pocket of my working class families and my small businesses. I'm proud of the work we've done on that. We've expanded supply that's helped on this, and we've passed some other bills here in the House of Representatives that will continue to help lower energy costs. We're also talking about tax reform.
Well, and I want to get into taxes right now, because Democrats say if you lower middle class taxes and raise top end to pay for it, that helps eliminate some of the imbalance. A lot of Republicans say, boy, if you lower top-end taxes, that spurs jobs, that helps the middle class. It's like two diametrically opposite views of solving the same problem. What's your take? What do you think helps on tax reform for middle class?
We need to fix this broken code. It is complex, it's anti-growth. And, look, if you're a small business owner, you can't afford a whole wing of corporate lawyers to go find these tax havens, these loopholes. So what we need to do is do what we did similar in the 1980s with a Republican president, President Reagan, and with a Democratic Congress. They went through the code, they eliminated loopholes and lowered rates. That's the kind of tax reform we need to do that's pro-growth, because middle-class families spend 96% of their take-home pay. And when they get a raise, or if they get lower energy costs, historically speaking, they spend 96% of that increase in their pocket. So this provides a private sector stimulus for growth.
And Rich, there's a little bit of an irony. For years, we had always heard that, the Democratic caucus was like herding cats. Everybody had regional or other, but there's a lot of separation within the Republican caucus as well. Maybe not as much as we've seen historically in the Democratic caucus, but there are Republicans who want to get stuff done, and there are Republicans who are sort of the Tea Party mantra. There's still that battle going on in the Republican Party, he said, looking at Bill.
There always will be.
Do you think, make a bet now, a year from now, before the full lame duck season kicks in or whatever, will we be surprised at how little or how much actually gets done? Because the conventional wisdom is right now, you're going to have the regular food fights, very little is going to get done. They'll try and do 5 more repeals of Obamacare that won't go anywhere. Some of the other stuff they'll either defund or make, Do you think more gets done than we think?
No, I think less gets done than we think. And I don't think we think a lot gets done. I think the animosity is so deep in Washington that I think both sides stop each other.
There's a lot of animosity, but there's also a division in
ideology.
that, not just ideology, fact. I mean, did Benghazi actually happen? Is global warming real? Will tax cuts and austerity spur the economy? There's evidence now on all those things. There are deniers in the Republican Party.
Oh, I thought it was the Democratic Party that was the deniers on those.
No, come on, man. You may disagree with
There
them
was a
ideologically. But there was a scandal at Benghazi?
Yeah, it's a disaster.
The Republicans themselves said there wasn't. The climate change. Is there climate change?
There's climate change.
You got people in the Republican Party saying it ain't happening. As long as there are sufficient numbers in the Republican Party that are out of touch with reality, they're entitled to their own opinion.
Perhaps the way to say it, there are a lot of third rails for a lot of Republicans out there, perhaps more than we've seen in years past. So I'm not so hopeful that a lot gets done, because there will be too many.
Bill's right for the wrong reasons. There won't be a lot done, but it ain't because Obama won't compromise.
I think it's funny. I think if you sat them all down and you said, let's take out the lobbyists and the PAC, in infrastructure, I can make the most compelling argument that as a country, if we invested in infrastructure, it would pay for itself.
If it comes with a tax.
Yeah.
Or an Obama victory.
I mean, if the TARP money had been able to be used for infrastructure, if those projects were shovel-ready, it would have been a perfect example of a good use. And it's a real shame that that guy.
A lot of them were, Bill. A lot of them were.
Yeah, but it got used for operating expenses.
TARP worked. The auto bailout worked. Obamacare is working.
All right.
Get over it.
Well, I'll tell you what we're not going to get over, and that is what happened in Albany today was an interesting address, an hour and a half long, but an interesting address nonetheless from Governor Cuomo. Some say, hey, wait a minute, did he wake up and become a progressive here, or is he a progractionary, as the man to my left has coined the phrase? We're going to join Dominic Carter here for some reaction to the state of the state out of Albany. Stay with us.